Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking some seriously, and I mean quietly radical insights from Seth Godin's landmark work on human connection. For decades, right, we were all taught that to make a real difference, you basically had to own a TV network, be a big-shot CEO, or get the blessing of some massive corporate gatekeeper. But today, we are going to fundamentally change how you think about leadership, belonging, and the absolute true power of the modern internet. You don't need a massive platform or deep pockets to make a difference anymore. You just need to understand the mechanics of a tribe, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Most people who could lead a tribe don't, because they are waiting for permission that will never come. Wow, that is a massive, confronting statement right out of the gate. We naturally just assume people don't lead because, well, they don't have enough followers, or maybe they lack the right resources. But the core argument we're exploring today is that the barrier isn't structural at all. It is entirely psychological. Think about it. The independent creators, the startup founders, or the local community organizers who bypass the traditional gatekeepers every single day. They didn't wait for a Hollywood executive or a bank manager to give them a green light. They just started. The permission they needed? It came from themselves.
So that brings us to Section 1, the new tribalism, and exactly why geography is no longer the barrier. The core premise here is incredibly timeless. Human beings have always organized themselves. We rally around shared beliefs, we rally around causes, around big ideas, and around people who simply see the world exactly the way we do.
And evolutionary psychology backs this ancient drive up perfectly. The legendary psychologist Abraham Maslow mapped out our hierarchy of needs, and he identified belonging as our third most fundamental human need. Number 3, it sits right above physical safety and right below self-esteem. We are literally hardwired for tribal connection. Think about what happens when someone moves to a brand new city where they know no one. The very first thing they do, completely instinctively, is look for their people, right? A running club, a religious group, maybe a gaming cafe. Because being isolated isn't just lonely, it is psychologically destructive. We crave connection just to survive.
Now, historically, our tribes were dictated by geography and obligation. Your family, your local church, your neighborhood. You were essentially born into them, and your options were pretty much limited by how far you could walk or drive. But today, the internet has totally changed the game. Think about niche communities like Jimmy Buffett's Paraheads, global climate activists, or super passionate open-source software developers. These are people scattered all across the globe, yet they are deeply, deeply united. And here is the absolutely crucial point. The internet didn't invent followers, not at all. It simply removed geography as a barrier. It allowed these massive, scattered groups of people who share the exact same meaning and purpose to finally find each other.
Which brings us to Section 2, Anatomy of a Tribe, where we'll be breaking down the core criteria. Now, what's really interesting about this is how incredibly simple the actual criteria for a movement truly are.
Seth Godin gives us a very precise definition. A tribe is a group of people connected to one another, connected to a leader, and connected to an idea. That is it. Notice what's missing there? There is zero requirement for corporate permission. There's no need for some massive multi-million-dollar marketing platform. You don't even need millions of people to make this work. Consider something like Wikipedia in its early days. It wasn't built by a corporation handing down top-down orders. It was built by a leader who connected a group of passionate individuals to the radical idea of free, accessible knowledge for everyone.
Let's walk through this golden triad structurally, because seeing it in action really changes everything. Step 1, connected to an idea. There has to be a shared belief that sparks a fire. Step 2, connected to each other. Now this one is vital. A crowd is just people yelling in the same direction at a concert, right? But a tribe? A tribe actually talks to one another. And step 3, connected to a leader. Someone has to step up and provide the direction. Take a movement like CrossFit, for example. The idea is intense functional fitness. The connection to each other happens when members are literally cheering each other on through a grueling workout. They aren't just running on isolated treadmills with their headphones in. And the leader is the coach setting the standard. When you have these 3 elements locked in, you have a highly mobilized tribe.
And this brings us to a really fascinating historical truth. Leaders organize. They don't invent. Just think about Martin Luther King Jr. for a moment. He didn't invent the concept of civil rights. He didn't invent the burning desire for equality and justice. That was already there, vibrating in the hearts of millions of marginalized people. What he did was step up to lead a scattered tribe that was already waiting. He essentially gave voice to them, helped them find each other, and said, "This is what we believe. This is where we are going. Follow me."
So we reach Section 3, the psychology of fear, and what's really holding you back. Look, this is really the emotional crux of our explainer. Because if leading a tribe is this accessible, and the tools are practically free, why on earth aren't more of us doing it?
Well, the answer lies in our conditioning.
You see, the 20th century factory model actively trained us for compliance. From the time we were kids, the grading systems in our schools and the rigid hierarchies in our corporate jobs taught us to just fit in, to sit in neat little rows and to wait for instructions. This system prioritized absolute safety over making an impact. You climb the ladder by, well, not making waves. But tribal leadership, it demands the exact opposite. It requires standing out. It requires taking initiative. It means embracing the role of the outsider to push things forward, which goes entirely against years of institutional programming.
And I really want to slow down here for a second, because the fear of stepping out of that safe factory model, it isn't irrational at all. Have you ever felt that literal drop in your stomach when you were left out of an important email thread, or maybe when you were criticized publicly? That isn't just embarrassment. It is a documented neurological fact that social rejection equals physical pain. Seriously, your brain's neural pathways treat being excluded from a group exactly the same way they treat a physical injury. So when you feel terrified of being criticized or terrified of stepping up as a leader and having no one follow, that is just your biology desperately trying to keep you safe from harm.
This biological fear manifests as what behavioral psychologists call the status quo bias. Basically, humans heavily weight potential losses over equivalent gains. We choose to protect what we have, even if it's kind of mediocre, rather than risk it for something better. Think about corporate giants like Blockbuster or Kodak. They had the resources to lead the digital revolution, absolutely, but their status quo bias completely paralyzed them. They were so afraid of cannibalizing their existing, familiar legacy businesses that they chose the comfort of the status quo right up until it destroyed them. And honestly, we do the exact same thing in our own careers and lives when we refuse to lead.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 4, the call to lead, and embracing the heretic. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact solution to those deeply ingrained biological and institutional fears.
Because we really have to rethink the word heretic. The source material defines the heretic not as someone who challenges the status quo just for the sake of causing trouble or rebellion. No, a true heretic challenges it out of a genuine, deep-seated belief that things should be different and better. Think of Steve Jobs, looking at the clunky, gray, hypercomplex personal computer market of the 80s and 90s. He challenged the status quo because he genuinely believed technology should be beautiful and intuitive. Acting on this requires something psychologists call moral courage. That's the willingness to act on your values despite heavy social pressure to conform. It is rare, but here is the best part. It is an entirely learnable skill.
So, why lead? Let's summarize the core argument here. First off, the world already has enough managers. We really do not need more people whose only goal is to follow instructions and maintain the status quo. Second, tribes offer genuine meaning in an increasingly fragmented and noisy world. Third, and this is absolutely crucial to internalize, the pain of not leading, of watching your potential tribe remain scattered, isolated, and voiceless, is ultimately far greater than the temporary sting of trying and failing. And finally, you only need the right followers, not millions of them. People are already out there, right now, waiting for someone just like you to stand up and say, "Come with me."
So let me ask you directly, what idea do you believe in strongly enough to build a community around even if people criticize you for it? What is that one thing you see clearly that others don't yet see? Next question. Ask yourself, where in your life are you waiting for permission to lead, and who exactly are you waiting for? Remember that factory conditioning is still operating in the background of your mind, trying to keep you quiet and compliant. The permission you are waiting for is never going to come from them. You have to give it to yourself. Finally, I want to leave you with this thought to linger on. If you had a tribe of just 100 deeply connected people who shared your exact beliefs, what would you do with them? The world doesn't need more fitting in. The world is waiting for your leadership. Don't leave your tribe waiting any longer. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.